On the other side of the issue, we turn to Russell Moore of the Southern Baptist Convention. I want to start with this question of, on this ruling, what can be done now for people who hold your view?
Well, I think that people have to understand that people who hold my view based on deeply held religious convictions aren't going to simply surrender those things. We can't. For us to change our views on marriage and sexuality would mean repudiating what we believe has been handed to us by Jesus and his apostles. We can't simply, we didn't make up our views on marriage and sexuality, and we can't unmake them. And so evangelical Protestants and Roman Catholics and Eastern Orthodox and others are going to continue to hold to our views on marriage and sexuality. We believe it's in the common good. We understand that short term things are very stacked against us here, but we ought to have the sort of pluralistic American environment where we can agree to disagree and where we can make our case without having our consciences paved over by those who would seek to do so.
So you can hold your view, but what about in a legal sense? I mean, what can anything be done?
Well, I think we're going to have to take a page from the pro-life movement and see this as a long-term strategy. I don't think that an infinitely elastic view of marriage is sustainable, and I think that we have to be the people who keep the light lit to the old ways when it comes to marriage and family, and that's going to be a generation-long skirmish. It's not going to be something that's going to be resolved in a presidential election or two.
You say infinitely elastic, but it's not really infinite.
Well, it seems to be increasingly elastic, and so we keep moving with various rates of rapidity toward tossing aside things that just a few years ago were seen to be slippery slopes.
You mentioned the pro-life, the Roe versus Wade analogy you've made before, but in this case, it seems to me that it's a little bit different. That in Roe versus Wade there was a kind of constant push against it. In this, a lot of the reason that the culture has changed is because people know people in same-sex relationships, and the opposition to that has diminished.
Well, but I don't think that's the case. If you look at what happened in Roe versus Wade, you had at least my wing of Christianity, evangelicals, who weren't concerned at all. We saw it as a Roman Catholic issue. You had a very lonely Roman Catholic witness against the abortion culture, and as time went on, and as people saw the implications of this, the more that they stood by what the scriptures teach on these things and by what their deepest convictions say. I think the same thing will be true here.
There will be a lot more people that you know who will have family members now as a result of this, who will now be married through same-sex marriages. What would you counsel them? What would your guidance be to a person of faith about someone in their family or a friend who goes on and gets married now?
Well, we don't hate anybody. We don't have hostility toward anyone. We believe in loving all people and respecting all people, including our gay and lesbian neighbors. And so holding to our convictions doesn't mean that we dispense with human kindness and actually with gospel spirit-driven kindness. It means that those two things go together. We have to be people of both truth and grace, of conviction and kindness, and I think that's what most Christians are doing now and have been doing for quite some time.
And last question, in terms of protections for people of faith, is there a specific protection that you would like to see in the wake of this ruling?
Well, it's really going to depend on what the victors in this ruling attempt to assert. Are they going to take a French revolutionary approach to the sexual revolution or not? And I think we have to hold by our First Amendment protections for people of faith and for religious institutions, because we're not going to be able to simply put our convictions in a blind trust.
Russell Moore, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, John.